Cladding, don't you think? You
I
probably
don't know,
sold,
probably.
you probably sold
Well,
most
my
of all of
husband
them.
bought this one, I think. That was the dumb thing you bought. You know what I mean? Yeah.
She would have always been suspicious of you.
Oh, yeah,
You know, she would have.
When did I say
She
you?
was,
You
I
made
love
the
Claudia,
thing.
but she was very suspicious about everything.
Yeah.
I don't know, because her husband's so calming. He's such a calming, nice, he's a good guy.
I talked to him yesterday. He looks for.
Yeah, you, oh, maybe.
Have they taken any?
No, they haven't, but I looked him up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22.
Call the order.
Fall, that's it. Decide what year.
We do the roll call.
Mr. Koch.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Glennon.
Here.
Mr. Lyons.
Here.
Also present and participating is Town Manager Dunham, Assistant Town Attorney Nazaro, and myself. And Gary Cantor should be joining us
Oh.
soon.
By
Zoom.
By Zoom, okay, good.
On the minutes, any comments, changes?
No.
I just want to reference something in the minutes that I'd like to try to add to the agenda. There was one, I gotta read it. Committee member Cantor suggested to add a formula to the spreadsheet for a two-story home. You would get 1 extra foot for the perimeter, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just discuss that. I'm not absolutely clear on what that meant, but it's something that one of our members suggested, and I want to be sure we include it in our discussion.
Great, so we can add that as item number 11 under number 5, categorize previously discussed items as primary, secondary, and other on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Any, no other comments? I'll move to
I move the mi-
announcements.
Yeah, we need to approve the minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. Koch.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
Mr. Glennon.
Yes.
Chairman Lyons.
Yes. Thank you, John, for noting that. So next meeting date to be decided. Let's leave that to the end, if you don't mind. Can we do that? Let's see.
Well, our ARPB meeting will be scheduled for October 17th, so just,
Okay, let's just schedule it then.
okay.
Thank you.
10/17 at 10 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah, let me
Renee,
look at what the agenda's
Yeah,
gonna be, and
okay.
then I'll
Have
base it
we
on
got
that.
much in at the moment?
One
TBD.
thing.
So we could even bring it forward.
Yeah, okay.
so it'll be in the morning at the conclusion of the ARPB based on the volume that we're going to see.
Perfect. Okay.
So let's move into the subject discussion. I'm proposing that, well, let me step back.
Gary, can you hear?
I can see and hear. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
Gary, how are you?
Excellent. I wish I was there, guys. But
Let me start with a reminder of what is our purpose, and that is to address massing in the core district. And we've had discussion on a lot of different subjects, concepts, ideas, so forth. And I thought what we maybe try to do is categorize some of the different things we've discussed between primary, secondary, and other. So to address massing, to illustrate my point here, what would be a primary? Well, FAR, if you reduce the FAR or you eliminate a second story, that would address massing in a very direct way. Some things that are secondary or angle of vision might be a secondary. And other, we've discussed minimum landscaping, terracing because of the FEMA. So what I like to do is sort of in our discussion today, focus first on what is primary. What do we think are the 3 or 4 things we've covered, or 5 or 2, that we think will have the most impact on our goal of addressing massing? And actually, probably the first step prior to that is where is the focus of our concern on the massing? And so let's first, sorry for changing this. I would like to geographically define the mapping that we think addresses the homes within the Corus District that need to, where we need to address the whole massing issue. And Trey, if you, and I want to sort of adopt that we all agree on what the mapping is. So let's go through the mapping.
Right, sure.
By the
So,
way, is everybody
Yeah.
okay with the general approach?
Yeah.
Okay.
so for mapping, we would just create an overlay district that includes, specified homes that would have different zoning criteria or additional zoning criteria. For example, we have the North Ocean Boulevard Overlay District, which is the first 50 feet on either side of A1A throughout town. So you have different criteria when you're going to be doing landscaping modifications or walls and things like that because of the nature of A1A and its historic nature. So there's something that has been identified as special or unique within that area. So that is that mapping concept or an overlay district. So it's a district that is overlaid on top of an existing district. So with this, we would have an overlay district in the core, which is identified, as, whatever name we can, would like to come up with, or we could just recommend to the commission that this be a district or an overlay district. And at this point, I've provided a map of a good portion of the core that is highlighted in red, which shows our proposed overlay district based on previous discussions. Given that this will have the most impact on massing in the core, these are all dry lots that face either Gulfstream Road or Polo and run the length of the town. So if all of these homes were replaced with, large 2-story homes, with, very close to the road, there would definitely be a Canaan impact on both, really, Gulfstream Road and Polo. So addressing the massing by some of this criteria that we've identified as it relates specifically to this area would have a very positive impact, I believe the committee would believe, on the massing issue. So at this point, that is the overlay district that we've sort of identified. And if everyone is okay with moving forward, we can sort of frame the discussion on the other criteria as it relates to criteria that would apply in this overlay district.
Correct. So, well, just to summarize, we would set a new set of codes that would impact just this group of homes, correct?
That is correct.
Mhm.
There's a secondary sort of mapping, and it's not a specific area as much as it's a type of home and this historic designation. So maybe we talk about that.
Right. So I haven't done a full deep dive into the historic designation process. The question is whether or not the committee would believe that would be valuable to entertain as a suggestion to the commission. With a historic designation, you are not required to demo or elevate your house if it meets the 50% substantial improvement criteria. So a lot of these older homes, the value of the structure itself is fairly low compared to some newer homes based on the appraisal information that we've seen. So it really limits what a homeowner can do to the structure without running afoul of those criteria. So, in able to help the homeowner make improvements to their property without needing to demolish it, that is something that we could consider. It would include developing a historic structure ordinance, enacting that. We may even have a board that meets periodically to review those applications. We would, I mean, it'd be up to the commission, but there are a number of different ways to do it. It's either the commission could seek to add those structures. I think the committee believes that it'd be best to allow just the homeowner to seek designation. Once it is designated, though, we would have, certain criteria to make sure that the structure itself stays consistent. So it's not just let's exempt ourselves from FEMA regulation. It is, okay, we've identified the structure as somehow significant, based on a criteria that we would develop, and they would have to maintain that structure in a certain way. So it would be an avenue for someone who purchases an older home, perhaps because they like a certain aspect of the architectural style, things like that. They would be able to then designate their home through a process that we would develop through an ordinance change to make modification to the structure consistent with the style and everything, and keep that similar without having an issue with.
So to summarize on that, Trey, we would come up with a set of criteria that would define what is historic.
Correct.
And the homeowner would make that election. It wouldn't be imposed upon them.
We would probably seek to draft an ordinance consistent with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so obviously the next step on that is coming up with the mechanics of how all that works.
Correct.
How many homes do you think we would have that would qualify? 5, 6? I mean, in my mind, there's only certain that are like the old, what do we call them, polo cottages when I was a kid. They're unique if the homeowners would go along with it. But if we identify them, and then we know.
And that's why, I really don't know the effectiveness of that other than maintaining a handful of properties. Just by way of example, Lemon Hill is 100 years old. It's down, on the south end of town. They're doing substantial improvement, but the elevation of the home is such that they didn't have any issues. And you're going to see a lot of that on the beach as well, because they are elevated. Those homes are situated a lot higher. So it doesn't really have a lot of impact on them other than us being able to acknowledge, that they're historic, if that's something that the homeowner would want to do. But Mr. Koch, you're right. It is largely probably the polo cottages that are along Oleander and in that area next to the school.
Some of them, there's a nice old polo cottage, I guess, is down there on the corner, Gulfstream Road and Gulfview Drive, that they completely. Some people have wanted to keep them, and they put the big butts, on the roof tiles, all the way around to keep them. Some people want to keep their home looking that way, and they would be the best ones that we could bring on board. And most of them have maintained them,
Right.
And we know who they are, and
So-
we don't coach them if they would be interested.
So in your red overlay here, you wouldn't want to just bring into it the homes west of Oleander Way and Tom Stanley, and I forget who owns the home south of Tom Stanley.
Given the size of the lot and how they are different in nature, the criteria that we would allow, impose, enact for that area may not be as applicable for those different properties. So that's why
It could be a second overlay. And so Bill raises a very good point. What are the historic homes? And until we define it, my gut is if I was to define it, it's mostly the polo. And that's what I was thinking from day one, but maybe it should be more expensive. I don't know. So but I would say very clearly what could be considered historic would be the polo. Whether there should be other homes, I don't know.
But we are saying that it's at the owner's discretion,
Yes.
because the idea that you own a property and all of a sudden it gives a categorization of historic and you're encumbered with different rules, people are going to get potentially quite annoyed. And also, I've owned my house for X years and all of a sudden it's a different category. But that's the area. If people want to opt in, because your point, Bill, some people want to keep it like that and whatever. But I think there has to be that choice, opt in or not. But explain to them that this is an option for you. As you say, we said about defining what the criteria are. I think that would be.
I think that's a win-win. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
Because when you talk about saddling a property with something new,
Yeah.
I mean, the extreme would be you can't build a two-story home.
Mhm.
I mean, that would be extreme.
Yeah.
Or
Mhm.
we're going to reduce the FAR by 50%. That's
Yeah.
extreme.
Yeah.
In this case, we're saying, if you want to preserve these beautiful homes, and we would encourage it and whatever we could do. So, okay. So the next step on that is when we meet it in October, we'll have some definition.
So, yeah, I would really want some direction on that. If just because, I mean, I guess we can develop some criteria. I just know that we've got another stop with the ARPB and then the town commission. So I just want to know how much you want me to develop a potential historic. Is it just research? Do you want me to, as far as like types of code, do you want me to identify maybe some structures that would be would qualify? Do you want me to develop some criteria? I mean, typically your criteria is historic based on the architect or people of significance that have lived there.
Should we make a proposal as a concept to ARPB, to the commission? And if they think it's a good idea, then we further develop it. Is that what you're?
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Because at this point, we are trying to address massing, and I feel like that may be outside of the scope. But if that is something that you want to recommend to the commission, I would give you enough information to make that recommendation, knowing sort of some details, but then have the commission or whomever really develop it. Now, if they want to send it, if the commission wants to send it back to you to develop an entire historic ordinance, absolutely.
A point of clarification. This discussion about historic is addressing massing. What we're trying to do is encourage people on the polo to make improvements where they don't have to. If you buy a house, my house, and you want to do some improvements, all of a sudden you run into FEMA. Now you might as well tear it down and build a two-story house. In this case, you can improve your historic home without raising the first floor, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it is clearly the reason we're discussing it. It's not for preserving historic homes as much as providing a mechanism for the homeowner to be able to keep it as a one-story.
No, and perhaps I kind of misspoke. I just was sort of relating it to it being a townwide ordinance. Now, obviously, it does address massing, but it would be subject to Place au Soleil, the beachfront district, elsewhere, not just in the core. But no, absolutely, it does. It would certainly address massing because it would allow the existing structures to remain. So, yes.
So this is a iterative process, and I said primary, secondary, other. Maybe we just make it two categories, primary or secondary. But let's try now. We have 10 things we've listed here. Mapping, we just discussed this. So let me identify what I think would be the items that would have the most impact
Mhm.
on massing. I'll pick a reduction in FAR. By the way, I'm just trying to identify the line item. We're not agreeing to reduce the FAR, but obviously that would have something to do. I would say to you that the second floor FAR as a percentage of the total FAR of the building would have significant impact. Roof heights would have a significant impact. The second floor setback from first floor, it's a little bit like the second floor FAR. If you reduce the second floor FAR enough, you probably don't have a need for the second floor setback from first floor. But if you keep it at the 50%, then maybe you want to reduce it, which effectively may reduce second floor FAR as a percentage of the total. So I think the key item as a incentive to limit the massing is creating opportunities for somebody to build a single-story home. And something that Bill Koch has mentioned a number of times is the calculation of FAR as it relates to unenclosed space. So I'd like to put that whole subject of allowing for additional FAR for first-story homes, and what the mechanics would. We need to define the mechanics, and I guess increased lot coverage for single-story home is the same thing. The secondary things, and forget the other. Let's call them secondary. I think architectural design. I know we haven't gotten into any specific items in architectural design, but there might be something there that it would help in the massing. And I think we probably have already addressed those in previous analysis of this subject. I think the landscaping and the amount of landscaping, the height of landscaping, the terracing, so all of a sudden this building just doesn't go up. I think those things are not as impactful as the first group, but kind of dampen the impact of a two-story house. So is anything else here? Angle of vision. Clearly that could be a mechanism. I'm not really that. Angle of vision should be a primary, but we need to discuss it. I'm not there yet at all on that. Is there anything that
Was angle of vision, is it what Palm Beach is using a lot now? They're beginning
After
to
your
use
meeting,
angle of vision.
after your meeting with them, is that what they're using?
Right. So the angle of vision is, we previously called it building height plane. I don't know if that rings a bell, but it's actually angle of vision. I'm sorry. It's so it's angle of vision, which is height. Building height plane is the side sort of setback. So that's they require 1 foot setback. 2 feet setback for each foot of building height. So if you were to build a 2-story home in Gulfstream at the maximum roof height of 30 feet, that roof at 30 feet would need to be 60 feet off of the front of the property line. So that is very significant. Now, what
the roof does with the front of the house?
The area that occupies 30 feet tall would have to be 60 feet out from the property line. So the lower that you get, or If you know, you can imagine a triangle
Yeah.
going up, so nothing would be able to be above that area. So if it's if it's 20 feet tall, then it would need to be 40 feet off. So it'd impact the entire structure, not just the second story. So that would effectively push it, back a little bit the higher that it gets.
So this subject has come up numerous times, not in the discussion of angle division, but and certain members of the commission have the view, just push the house back. I've never felt that addresses the real issue. Because the real issue is, the streetscape's one thing, but most importantly, when you live in the house, and Katie Orthwine would be an example, that house probably meets the angle of vision, it's set back enough, but what does it do to her property? And so I think that just, and I've showed you pictures of my house, if you might recall, but there they have the triangle rule, which says it's not the setback from the front of the house or the back of the house, but from the sides. And as you raise your roof, then you have to go in and in. So I have a roof like this. And very honestly, we would never have designed this house this way, but I think we've all seen this. It's very steep.
Yeah.
And we don't want that. We like the house and we like where we live, but I wouldn't have
Had to
designed
get
it
that
way.
steep to get the second floor on, is that what happened? Had to get that steep to,
Yeah, because every time you went up, you had to go in.
yeah.
So I think that we need to address the four sides, not just the front.
Paul, do you think that discussion would fall neatly into two buckets? The one is incentivize, Bill's point, incentivize what we're doing to try and incentivize single story buildings. And the other bucket is, okay, if you're going to go with a second story,
Okay, that's good.
this is what it is. And in terms of, because, if you like, we know this pretty well now, but trying to present it to people, I think if we hit it into two buckets of what can we do to incentivize the lower floor, single story, and then what are we, if someone, they have a choice, but these are the rules and regs for going for a second.
Much better way to present it.
That would
I agree with
if
Yeah,
we
let's do that.
drop it into two buckets.
Yeah, and Paul, the thing, just to point out, I'm looking at the old plat here, and starting Gulfview Drive on Gulfstream Road, the first block running north up to Middle Road, all those lots in essence we'll say are 100 feet wide, and the depth, we'll average them at 137 feet, which is shallow. Heading the next block north on Gulfstream Road all the way up to Lakeview, they're all 135, 136 in depth up to 140 or 144. So they're still pretty small. And so if we want to, they aren't as big as like your lot on the Polo Drive side. So we got to keep in mind that we want to keep them one story if we can get them to do it, but they're going to have a bigger footprint on that smaller lot. So people like, Katie Orthwine just phoned out, hey, somebody can have a family. So we're going to have to make a bigger footprint so everybody encourages them to have a one-story house, but they can still raise two kids, a 3-bedroom or possibly a 4-bedroom house. And we need room from the street side, because if you have, say 2 kids and you have a housekeeper, so that 2 kids, when they get old, that's 1 car, housekeeper 2, and then 2 in the garage for the husband and wife, that's 4 cars. So we don't want the cars in the street, so if we encourage a bigger first floor, it gives whatever Paul calls it, the view looking out, and
That would fall into the bucket of what do we want people, what can we offer people?
So
incentivize people?
they can build a nice, just say a family home on a small lot of 1 story, and we get what we're trying to, no mass.
You know, that life is always striking the right balance.
Mhm.
We're looking at a small section of homes in the entire town of Gulfstream. And, you know, it's not just Gulfstream. You know, if you want a big house with some of the things that you're mentioning, you know, you could still live in Ocean Ridge. I mean, you don't.
Oh, you can push them somewhere else. I'm just knowing what we're doing when we're doing it.
Right. So
If we cut it down where it's basically like myself, my wife and I, we never had children, but we could live there very easy. The Glennons or somebody wants to come and have a family, and he's a nice gentleman, we'd love to have him living here, you know?
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and
I'm just throwing it out as an idea, not backing it.
I understand the consequences of what we're looking at may not appeal to certain buyers.
Mhm.
You know, as relates to families, and I've referenced this before, you know, our daughter Olivia built this house. It's a small house. And when they were in Brooklyn, everybody had their own private floor. I mean, it was a big, big place. And they operated well in that, and they operate really well in this, you know. And
Well, they have a big house on a small lot, and, you know, if they had a home at the cards there, it'd probably be tight.
the parking.
You know what I mean?
The parking's tight, but
Yeah.
in any case, you know, we can accommodate if we're trying to look at the whole massing and the impact in the core district. We are to some degree going to limit what somebody can do, but there are limitations already.
Just to throw a figure out there, the homes in the proposed overlay district are all going to, under current FAR calculations, be somewhere in between in the mid 5,000 square feet. So you're looking about 5,500 square feet. So to the extent that we're moving things around, limiting second floor FAR, the square footage is going to stay the same. So you will be able to have a family, you know, with a 5,500 square foot, unless we reduce the FAR or something like that. But for right now, I think we've got the ball of clay, and we're trying to figure out where do we put it, how do we shape it, things like that, based on setbacks or second floor FARs or percentage of first floor and things like that. So it's just
that's a good response. I mean, I think you can still get. So, Bill, I mean, the point of this committee is to have different perspectives and a discussion of these different things. Do you think at 5,500 square feet? I mean, well, that's
big. That's great.
Big
That
house.
is a big house. That's more than that. And then it comes back to, I hope I'm not getting out too far outside our box here. Then it comes, okay, 5,500 square feet. Okay. Now, that all AC space is huge. If you eat up a lot of that 600-700 square feet of that in for a garage, and you have some balconies that, you know, that overlap the first floor, so you have covered outside area, and that's considered AC space. Your house gets down to 3,800 square feet. I'm just pulling out ahead pretty quickly. And when you get down 35, 36, then you're getting tight. You know, we're thinking of 55,000 square, 5,500, 5,300. That's big. But when you eat out all the rest, and all of a sudden we have a house of 3,600 square feet.
how much would the garage be?
Well, they're all 2-car garage, and you need side to open the doors.
800?
800, yeah, 900. Sometimes people put a little.
That would be a big garage.
Well,
But I think you can still find something that you can do 42 to maybe even 45.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
And okay, so let's.
That's it.
Well, the person who built south of you, how big is that house? Do we know? It had like a little pool house
Oh, it's
And
55.
Okay.
Anyway.
And Gary built a one-story home that fit.
Yeah, but Gary's on 160 feet,
Okay.
100 by 160. In the house next to Paul's, the depth is 167 feet.
Oh, see, that's a deep lot. Yours is that deep too?
And all the ones on the other street are, 135, 138. They get smaller quicker, that's all.
So let's
If
focus on that sort of elephant in the room. As we go here, I want to be taking notes for the minutes. I think we've agreed to have these two silos. One, the incentives to build one-story homes, and in the second bucket, how to moderate massing through other tools. So let's talk about the actual mechanics of an incentive. And what I'm thinking is, and I'm not sure how it exactly works, but if you could create minimally 5% to 8% of additional square footage by building a first-story house, that is a real incentive to consider a one-story house. And by the way, before I spend more time on this one-story house, it is interesting how Gleckstein has been building these houses, Blue Water Cove. Most of them going to be one story, correct? So it's not like we're out of tune with what seems to be the market. So as an observation. So
And actually, the second-story homes he's building blend in very well with the one-stories because they're so small. The second stories are so small.
Case in point, what we had today.
both of the 2-story homes on Blue Water Cove have only 20% of the FAR on the second floor.
which is
So that would fall into our bucket of rules for, second story homes.
right. But let's stay on what are we gonna? Okay, so Paul Lyons buys a piece of property. You change the rules on me. Tell me why it's good. Okay. I mean, what are we gonna offer?
Yep.
Like
I think, in my mind, some of the two major things we've talked about would be additional square footage. So say you could go from 33 to 35 or something of total FAR if you do a one-story home. And then the second is the percentage at which you're counting covered outdoor space, which I think, as we've talked about, is like, helpful from a, like the way people are living today, as opposed to, when a lot of these houses are built. To change that exception from 75 to, if you have a one-story home, it's 65 or something, that you get, not only do you get additional total space, but then you get a bonus from you get a bonus in total from FAR. You also get a bonus from covered outdoor space that I think doesn't, that doesn't impact really, I think, the look or the feel of a house, maybe like around hardscape versus landscaping. Like, I think that's something to consider, but doesn't impact really the look of the house, but I think really greatly improves the quality of space, of usage of space within the house. Those to me are two key carrots.
Would you see anything in terms of the position of the property, in terms of the setback from the street, so that people have got more space to enjoy we've got to accommodate cars and whatever, but I just wonder if there's a case, because we're giving them, if you like, more uncovered space at the back, and is it a case of the family wanting to be outside? Would that need to move, or do you think that would be any sort of incentive?
Well, I think clearly from a streetscape perspective, ignoring Bill's comment, the functionality of needing space for cars, blah blah blah. I think you can have certainly a different setback for a one-story from a two-story.
That's what I was thinking. To give more space at the back of the house for potentially a pool, play area, whatever.
Yeah, because I think that's what I have is a big backyard. I happen to like the big backyard. And some people don't. My brother has no backyard, but that's
Right.
just, he likes vanilla, I like chocolate.
Yeah.
And that's what, every property's different. But so I do like that idea. I think that should be a aspect of, if you, as an incentive, you can bring it a little closer.
I think that would be an incentive. Gives you more, you spend more time at the back of your house than you do in the front of your house. Generally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Trey, do you have this concept that we can commit the words, or
So-
Michael, maybe have Michael?
So we just summarized FAR potential increase for a first story home.
Yeah.
Unenclosed or whatever, I probably get the terminology wrong, but unenclosed outdoor space or covered space, uncovered, uncovered.
Covered unenclosed.
Covered, unenclosed,
It has only been until recently that I've managed to.
What's that
State that properly.
counted in the FAR calculation?
So it is 100%.
Oh, it is 100%.
There is a special exception that allows you to get an extra 300 on top, but you have to, take it off the air conditioned space. So for each 1 square foot that you exceed the maximum permitted FAR, 2 square feet within the maximum permitted FAR have to also be covered unenclosed. So if you go an extra 300 square feet, 900 square feet has to be that covered unenclosed. So that's a special exception approval. What Mr. Glennon is mentioned, and what I actually, Paul Lyons came up with when we were meeting earlier this week, is maybe counting that as a percentage. So 75%.
Yeah.
So each square feet, you're getting less of a penalty, if you will, for so you're incentivizing more outdoor space and that not impacting your air conditioning space, which is valuable.
Right.
And I think that's a great
You said it's not
potential
it's
tool.
not perceived as a penalty anymore. It's exactly what we're trying to do, which is incentivize
So
to stay at 1 story.
So if you would allow 5 to 8% of additional FAR for single story homes in this district, plus have that covered unenclosed, reduce count, I think that is a huge incentive to build single story homes.
How do you guys feel about limiting the size of the second story?
Well,
Well,
we're
we'll
gonna
get
get
to
We're
to
not
that.
there,
that's the
okay,
second
we're
one.
still, okay.
So I think that you identified as pervious, non-pervious. I mean, I did some calculations on my house, and basically, if I built out to the max, which I'm not, but if I did, I would be at about 50% of my lot size. But that ignores patios, pools, driveway. So we need to figure out the pervious. Is there any state, federal rules about, could you put cement on the entire?
There would be a drainage
Yeah.
requirement. You have to maintain a certain amount of rainfall on your
On-site
property.
Water retention.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, there's, nobody's telling us it has to be.
No, it's regulated at the local level.
It might be interesting to pick 2 or 3 houses and see how that would work on these different lot sizes. Or not, I don't know whether it's relevant. Is it relevant?
Not if the regs are there.
It is relevant, and Mr. Glenn and I talked a little bit about that, and I tried to get sort of a standard percentage that the driveway would take up of a lot, or a pool and pool deck would take up. I can try to, manage that. It's just not included in any of the applications. They submit the total, not in pieces.
Well, I think that, like, as I think about some of the houses and like different pool sizes or different like layouts of their outdoor space, I think that, and for a lot of people, it's kind of a plug. Like, okay, I have X amount of space given this regulation. I'll make my pool, this size versus this size.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is, like, that to me seems like secondary to, like, people are managing towards, what do I want my house, or like, how am I figuring out my house on the lot, and then figuring out, okay, what's the,
what's
maybe
left. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that could have a negative impact on, landscaping and things like that, because that's what it's about. It's about landscaped open space. That's what our impervious is. So you just have more more pavers and less green space.
So going through your list that you had there in terms of the incentive ideas, do you think if there's any mileage in the setback from the street being reduced so people have more space at the back, or is that something that just,
Oh, no, I think we should include that.
because you're putting together the hit list at the moment of the proposals, yeah? So I think we should include that, consider the setback reducing the setback from the street on a single story.
Single story home.
So you've got more space.
Livable,
At the-
open area.
Yeah,
Open area.
Open area to play
Pool,
for pool.
et cetera.
Mhm.
Kids, whatever.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
What is it, 50 feet now? What's the front setback in this neighborhood? Is it only 30
I
feet?
think it's 30, but let me
I think it's
just
30.
It's not
confirm.
very far from the center line of the road or from your property.
Is that from the property?
Maybe it's 40?
Yeah, I mean, you're right away.
Oh,
Your
right, it's-
survey,
it's-
Your own property.
30 feet from the
30
front
feet.
property line.
You're talking about letting that get closer? 30 feet
I
is
know
very
it's already
far,
pretty
guys, from the
close.
property
Yeah.
line already.
Okay, another 2 feet or with something to,
I think
Does it
that
make
should
that
be
much
budgeted
difference?
Yeah, it's a little bit the packaging.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you will.
Okay.
even if it's 2 feet.
I mean, because I think we agreed that a two-story at 30 works. If you now, these are relative decisions you make. Okay, now we're gonna have a one-story that's 2 feet closer. Which would you prefer?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
to me, I go.
And without jumping ahead, potentially when we get to the other bucket of the second stories, perhaps we increase the distance from the street by 2 feet. And I'm not jumping ahead, but that might be, and with the incentive, guess what's first story, second one, we're pushing you further back.
By the way, I need to leave by 10. My wife's having a couple of procedures in the hospital today. So I want to continue, but I'll hand it over to Malcolm.
Okay.
Continue. I think we're all on the same page. Any other things on the incentive bucket?
I think that's a fairly-
One other question for, I guess, Michael or or Trey about what you guys were just talking about. If you increase the FAR, but you don't do with this, is there room to put that FAR in with the setbacks? Because I know when we built our house is almost a square just to be able to get that square footage in. So it's something to test to make sure that people
Yeah.
do, or that they can have a little bit of interest to how they design the house.
Sure. So the FAR is already at 33%, which means you have 66% of the lot that's open. Then you have to take into account the side setbacks, front and rear setbacks. So that obviously takes some of it as well. I don't know what's 5% of 250 feet is.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if when you increase the FAR, you may, in order to have it so it's not a straight across in the front and straight across in the back, just want to make sure that you change the setbacks enough that it's not truly a square house. Ours is not
you
truly
can
square,
get
but
some
there's
relief.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, he's good point.
So we'd add that
But-
to,
Yeah, we have to, understand the consequences of some of these changes if it impacts something else like setbacks. So I
so
think,
at the end of this meeting, we're going to come out with our 2 buckets for the next meeting to really drill down into the specifics of each one.
and well, I think I'll work with you in doing some math on a bunch of, I think we should take that math that Bill has and take sort of the smallest to the
You may want to
biggest
look at the
and see-
smallest and see how it
how,
works.
how the mechanics
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, because by the time you box it in with all the setbacks, even though the FAR is 0.33, it may not even fit in that box.
No.
Then you got to go up,
Right.
So we may have to change those.
Yeah, I
sizes.
did it on my property, but I didn't, I thought my property was like everybody else's.
You're deep.
No, they're
Yeah,
very in
yeah,
depth. They're all about 100 feet across, aren't they, Billy?
They're all 100 feet, but you can see the depths.
Yeah, it's quite a difference.
You go 135 to 167 in depth,
It's funny,
another 30 feet.
They're shallower on Gulfstream than they are on
Oh,
Polo.
yeah,
Mhm.
they're real shallow.
Yeah,
So-
my goodness.
All the
Okay,
way.
can we move,
Yep.
if there's no other
Yeah, Paul, take off.
incentive buckets, yeah, I'm gonna leave it at 6, 7 minutes. The thing for dampening impact of two-story houses. Whatever term, maybe there's a more artful term than that, but I think the second floor FAR is a percentage of the first floor. I've been thinking about that for some time, and I'm more supporter of it just based on when I went through Blue Water Cove and I was looking at this house. Can you bring that house up? No, okay, never mind.
The one that we just looked at earlier?
No, it's built, yes.
That was already built.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I don't have that.
that's fine. It's less than 20%. And it's a very pretty house. I've discussed some of these things with my daughter, and Dad, that's a terrible idea. You can't reduce the FAR on the second floor. I mean, the house will look stupid. She didn't quite put it that way, but it looks like, it does kind of work in some of these houses.
It's really just to get the third or fourth and fifth bedroom. They just stick a couple up with some bathrooms, two bathrooms, and two
And
bedrooms. that's
we
really-
have a number of houses. There's one, right?
Trace with it.
That's the home that Mr. Lyons is talking about in Blue Water Cove.
Yep.
That's the street view, so you can't really, you can't really see the second story
No.
very
So it's
well.
very pretty.
Yeah,
It is.
But the second story is, I think, 18% of the.
Yeah, that's
FAR
all of the
for
whole.
this particular
Yeah.
one.
So I don't know what the right number is, but 50 is, I think, too much.
Mhm.
And I think we could go to
Even if you took
maybe 25. I don't know, but so I would recommend that be a consideration of going from 50 to
a number to be decided. For
Yeah, you gotta see what works.
Yeah, but that's,
Yeah, yeah.
we're talking about broad buckets now, and then the next meeting, we really can drill down and have our thoughts, but let's look at it in terms of, that's one of the considerations. We definitely, I mean, what I'd suggest is that in here, what is our top priority, in terms of disincentivizing the second story?
So
I
in
think reducing the FAR is a major one.
And in trying to come up with that number, staff can pull the most recent 10, 15 house, some number with, a street view and then the percentage of second floor FAR. So you can get an idea of what 40% or 50% looks like relative to an actual approved house in town.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second story FAR is, and this is, as I say, my priorities are, say, the top three. The next one would be potentially the setback, which builds into our angle of view, right? Which we've been talking about. Increase the setback from the street. That would be top of my list.
increase
Second on
the
my list.
setback from this.
It's required now. Or what is the setback on a second floor now?
So there are
It can't be
four.
straight up from the.
There are
No, no.
4 requirements that you need to incorporate, or one of 4. One of them is a 5-foot setback from the front of the house to the second floor.
And there's also one on the sides.
about
Right,
the
in the
What
sides.
about the whole property moving back?
Is that a
You
suggestion?
mean if it's a second story, if it's a two-story home?
Yeah.
Increase the front setback as
Yeah.
well.
But see, again.
Because you're just moving it back.
Yeah, but you're addressing one side of the property.
Yeah.
And when you push things back, you push people back into their privacy, because
Yeah.
I mean, people have, the back of the house is where the pool is and everything.
Yeah.
So that bothers me.
Okay.
Also interferes with light.
Yeah.
Grass doesn't grow, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just going through here. What are our sort of top three? If everyone had a top three in this list, what would we put as
The height of the building, so I don't think that we can consider it, but I think that would be sort of at the bottom of the list, because I don't think you can reduce the height much that make much of an impact.
I agree.
So I rather let them have the two-story, but just make it small as a proportion at first. So maybe we just decide that that's off the list now. Do we agree? I mean, Bill, you had suggested there might be ways you could build a house to reduce the height, but do you think we could?
That's all internally. You know, I mean, in terms of how you do the trusses and the roof trusses and you tray it up, you know,
Tray
stairs.
roof.
So you get the second floor a little lower, but your trusses are all scissored in the second floor. So we have, not a dome, but it's a big tray in the center. And so it's like houses are today. When we grew up, houses in Gulfstream were, 7, 8 foot ceilings at most, and they went to 9, they went to 10, and now people like 11. But if they trust it, they can get, a 2-story. They could have 20 feet, and we can lower
Right.
the roof.
Your wall. may be
And
8.5
then
feet,
you
but the
can
ceiling-
achieve
the
what
ceiling-
you're talking about.
Mhm.
It's something that's structural. It has really.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it to
We
you,
can get
Malcolm.
to
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry
Thanks,
to
Paul.
leave.
No,
Thanks, you can
Thanks, Paul.
help on the roof a foot or two.
Yeah,
So-
I'm just doing more of a decorative ceiling.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're gonna-
On the edges, but you then go in, yeah.
You can trade
I
up
think
to
it was
11.
Marsh told us how to do
Yes.
that.
So in terms of what's going into the second bucket of what are we going to suggest to reduce the massing of second story properties? What have we got in there, Trey? Basically, it's just reduce the FAR on the second story.
So far, it's reduced the second story percentage of FAR, and then there was also to be considered is the front setback
Front setback.
in general, but
Yeah.
also the front setback
Of the first
of,
floor.
of the second story portion.
Right.
And then Billy just mentioned the roof height, the overall roof height of a second story could
And
be possibly brought down.
Yeah, you might be able to save a couple feet or so.
Well,
All
but
we're
that makes a
talking
big
is
difference.
5 feet.
We could ask an
2 feet,
an
2.5
architect told
might
us
be a
that.
big difference.
It-
We can look into it.
I thought we had just agreed to remove
That
that
was
from
Paul's-
consideration.
Paul,
That was what
leave
you
it
Paul-
on
said.
there.
No, Paul went down that route, but if
He
the whole-
didn't, I think we had architects here that described how you can do that, what Billy's talking about, where you can drop the height of the roof, but still maintain a high roof feel
Yeah.
inside.
See,
It's
in
with the
my
trusses.
house where I, built a second 2-story house here, my first floor is higher than my second floor.
Sure.
And then when I went and redid my house in the year 2007 or something, I wanted a higher second floor. I don't know what I have. If it's say it's 10 on the first, maybe it's 9 or 9 a little more on the second. I wanted to have 10 or more in the master bedroom. So I came and got a permit and scissored it. And I gained another 2.5,
Yeah,
3
right.
feet. And I learned from that. That was an existing structure that's 35 feet to the top of it. And you, from the outside, you can't tell the difference. And I think,
I believe our recent 2-story application that we just heard as part of the ARPB was 28 feet tall.
Yeah.
2-story
28
portion.
feet.
only
So,
28 feet. So
so
again, reducing the height.
and that shows that it probably has no impact on the value of the property.
Yep.
Because
So roof height should be considered.
So those are
so maybe dropping it
2
from
feet.
from 30 to 28.
Because it's been proven that it can be done
Yeah.
from a
check
developer.
with, we can check with Mark and see
Yep.
if you got a 28 foot, how high can you make the first and second
Yeah.
floor?
Yeah, because that's what we're
they're
trying to
talking
get at
about.
the end of
They
this,
can probably
2
still manage.
buckets, and we're making it so compelling to build and easy
Mm-hmm.
to build a first story. And if people want to go for a second, then these are just the new requirements. They can't be onerous and draconian to the point of someone's not, says, well, hang on, this is crazy.
Well, what I like is that all the criteria that are under consideration do appear to have a fairly significant impact on massing, but it is not impacting the size of the home that you can build currently, which
Which is what people
if you have a house, in this area and all of a sudden you tell someone, well, you're going to be restricted and you build 500 square feet less, that has a perception of impacting you and the value of your property. So at this point, we're really just, again, moving the clay around, but it's the same amount of clay.
Right.
And it sounds like, at least based on sorry, Greg.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm still trying to get something out of my eye. Go ahead.
It sounds like we're moving or kind of codifying where the market is moving anyway, of like just ensuring that, we're capturing where like smaller second floors,
Okay.
like roof height.
Yep.
Like we're just kind of codifying that and saying, okay, the market's moved this direction. We want to ensure that it doesn't move back.
So we're accepting the idea that I mean, I'm not sure how tall the ceilings were in this 28-foot house that was
Yeah.
presented to us. Early on when I was here, we had a group of architects come in here and we talked about this very same thing. And none of them wanted to reduce the height of the ceiling on the second floor.
Right.
And so I don't know, you talked about scissoring. I mean,
Well, that's
I'm
not what did it. It's how you grade a bigger. See, the second stories throughout the entire town, usually people are older, the master bedroom's on the first floor.
right.
If
Sure.
and if the master bedroom's on the first floor and they have a couple kids or whatever, then they put them on the second floor because they don't
Sure.
care.
Yeah.
If like the house at the end of Gulfview Drive that was built right at the point, the master bedroom's on the second floor, and of course you have real
Sure.
high ceilings, a big bathroom, so
Right.
you really don't want to limit people the ability to have a taller house. I'm just trying to figure a way you can have a taller house in the smaller
Right.
structure.
Sure.
But perhaps what we had this morning is actually a good indicator that architects can live with a 28-foot.
Yep.
And because they're building it for the market.
And Mr. Glenn, is that what you're referring to? Is that
Yeah.
maybe the trend is?
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you,
Okay.
Michael. I agree.
I'm looking to see what size the room ceilings are in.
Right. So in terms of moving forward, we've got our two buckets. We've got our points in each one. How do people feel in terms of the next meeting? We actually come up with numbers against each
Really
one.
quantify it.
Yeah, let's quantify. We've got the headings because, let's try and move this forward. Can I ask, in terms of all the work you did, Michael,
Michael.
on the spreadsheet, is it possible, I'm just thinking here, to put in for the next meet? Well, you've done it here actually. There were ifs. Can you talk us through it?
Yeah. So, Gary,
Gary, can
Yeah,
you see
okay.
it? Did you get a
Here,
copy?
Gary, I'll bring it up on screen because it'll be easy for me.
You don't
to
need to do that. I actually have it pulled up as well.
Okay. So essentially what I tried to do here is bring codify and I got at least one thing wrong about the uncovered footage, FAR percentage. But try to bring the current code and say, okay, you put in whatever your lot input is, and you can change any of this. So I just to make it simple, did 100 by 100.
Yep.
So what does that mean from total lot size? Then just kind of a pick, or then it's like two categorizations. Like, is this a large lot and does it kind of fall into that bucket?
Yep.
Or is it a small lot and fall into that bucket? If you reduced it, to either of those, then those no's would change to yes, and then it would flow through the rest of the model. Then using what's, I guess, A, B, C, Q, D, E, P up at the top, this is saying these are kind of the drivers for this worksheet, saying what is the max FAR by code, taking kind of the FAR based on the lot size, the uncovered exception, and then the summing of the totality of the FAR. So, and Trey, is that right in that is the uncovered exception in addition, or does that you still have to stay within that?
It's an addition, but you also have to sacrifice. It's an addition, but you also have to sacrifice 2 feet within the permitted FAR as covered unenclosed. So it's sort of a give and take. So if you take 100 feet, 200 within the maximum permitted have to be covered unenclosed. At the end of the day, the FAR is permitted to be an extra 100, but there are criteria that you have to meet, and that's one of them.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the FAR is greater. There's just sort of a trade-off with that covered outdoor space.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm
All right,
explaining
so
it
that
well.
that might need to be edited.
So-
But
So 2-story.
and then what I tried to do below is kind of compare a 1-story versus a 2-story house, given kind of what our calculations were above. For a 1-story house, what does it actually mean from a layout? Like, what's your first floor covered? What's your first floor uncovered? But I think I'll need to refine that to make sure
Okay.
that just based on the conversation today. And what's in yellow is saying, okay, as we change this stuff, so the lot size FAR moving, you can see row A up at the very top, moving from 33 to 36 results in what change? Then similarly for row Q, if you took the uncovered FAR from I guess it should be 100 to 75.
Yeah.
What does that allow you to do? If you change the uncovered exception, what does that flow through? And then similarly with the first and second floor percentage, which right now are not changed, but we could. That will flow through the spreadsheet, and so you can start to see over at the far right hand side as you look through current code versus new code in yellow. So essentially comparing purple to yellow, what does that actually do from a different standpoint? Like, what is the FAR you're getting change? And just in this example, it's those changes result in 400 of additional square feet.
Yep.
And then how does that flow through to a first for second floor? And I mean, as we think about like as we just broken out this list, like the fourth point on like the second story disincentives is just really everything we're talking about in the first story incentives, meaning that you're losing out on 10 to 11% of additional square footage. Like that, I think more important, or like that becomes disincentive number one is space.
Yeah.
In my mind. So the I guess the point of this worksheet, or like what I'm trying to put together, is for whatever we're saying are really like the incentive, or whatever we're saying are the primary considerations here, like putting something together that actually shows mechanically. And I think this is something that hopefully can be used as a tool even into the future of like, what does it actually result in? Like all of this from a practical standpoint or an execution standpoint means what from a square footage percentage.
And as you say, from an incentive point of view and as a tool, that's what people want to know. How much more space have I got on my property because I'm choosing to have a first story building? And if you can do this Michael, with this, the great thing is if you do this in real time, when we get down into the weeds at the next meeting,
you can
turn around and say, what happens if it's 32, 31,
yes, exactly.
35?
That'll show.
And,
exactly.
And because it basically cascades through to to the metric of that's how much more space they get, I think that lets people have a real feel for throwing numbers out there.
Yeah.
No.
So that's what.
So for the next meeting, you could put the conditional in of if for that.
Yeah. And then we can actually run it through like, okay, exactly as you said, Malcolm, like 36 versus 34 versus.
Because
like
we've got the broad points, but at the end of the day, we've got to have a metric that comes out and says that's what we've got.
And I think maybe the only other thing that I would think about whether it makes sense to add is kind of the setback math, kind of what Tom was talking about of saying like, and Gary, like given existing setbacks and giving this lot size, like essentially create another yes, no, like does the size house that this would, the output from these changes, whether you could actually fit it on the lot given the setback.
Yeah.
Without it being just a square block.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean,
It's buildable.
So,
It's buildable.
let me see.
It's a great theory practice dilemma.
Michael, I think it may be like there's like basically it's building the building envelope. So if it's 60 by 80, that might be 4,800 feet, and it might be worth checking with an architect to say, if it's 4,800 feet, in order to get some interest, so it's not a complete block, do you need 30% more, 20% more? They may be able to answer something like that as well.
Yeah.
You can't just say it fits and it's a square. Somehow or another, we need to ask somebody that.
No, it needs to be, I mean, it needs to be marketable, it needs to be something that both the architect and yeah, exactly, that actually
Mhm.
conforms to,
Yeah.
a marketable.
One other point on this, on the marketability of it, if you have an extra 300 feet of FAR, and also when you do a two-story home, you're stealing about 100 feet probably from each floor. It becomes 500 feet or so. Like, who doesn't want 2 extra rooms? It becomes like, Malcolm is saying, it becomes quite, you'd really have to want a two-story house or a
Yeah,
lot extra left out.
Yeah, even in this, 400 feet's a lot. It's
It
a
is.
20 by 20. That's a two-car garage. It's
Yeah.
big. And this is just using, and Michael's just using a 100 by 100-foot lot.
Yeah.
Most of these are going to be 100 by.
Which again, you can put the
135.
Yeah, no, you
Yeah,
just change it.
you've
Yeah.
got it where we can just put in it's the length that's going to be the one that's changing. So these numbers will get even better.
So for the next meeting, because this will be a living, breathing spreadsheet, if we could take a couple of specific examples
Yeah.
from
Well,
what Bill's been
how
talking
about the
about.
smallest one and the largest one? Billy has.
Bill, if you can-
Did I give you a plat, an old plat? Do you?
If we've got the largest and the smallest,
Yeah, I mean, we could.
Yeah,
run
we
it
could
with
you could do like 4 or 5 different scenarios.
Yeah.
Like small, large, and then like 2 others.
normal or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
There isn't any of them that are going to hit 20,000 feet. I don't think any of them that far will. I don't think.
There may be, I think there's a double lot on Lakeview.
As there.
but that
Well, the
would be-
holdings have, but they're considering that as a separate buildable lot, aren't they?
Yeah, those are separate lots
Okay.
currently,
Yes.
And if they,
There is a double though, or 1.5 width lot. I see one there.
it's on Lakeview and
I see it.
Banyan, I believe.
Yeah,
It's a little bit larger. That's probably the largest one in the area. So what I can do, and Mr. Lyons mentioned that he would get with me to do the math relative to FAR for the lots in this district. So what I can do is I can send Mr. Glennon what we have for
so-
surveys that will give us
So
a
let's
good
make that
idea.
A real deliverable for the next meeting. Four examples. Yep. Where they are on the map, on the overlay. Big, small, medium,
Give that to-
and then Trey,
Yeah.
exactly what you said.
That's the original
You
plat.
may need your magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Michael, but you-
Yeah,
Well,
that's the original plat.
we have surveys for a lot of the properties in our records, so I can pull those.
That
Just,
will-
I mean, the plat is obviously
Right.
valuable, but there may be,
Yeah.
lot
So for the
lines
next
change
meeting,
over
we're
time.
going to look at the consequences of what our proposals could be, because we'll be able to plug in those numbers.
yeah, exactly.
Great.
So, okay, before, I just want to make sure that I'm meeting the expectations
Yeah.
for our next meeting. Can we go over the list of items real quick,
Yep.
and then I'll go over what
Yeah,
I have down
Go over
as
each
well.
bucket, what you've got.
Okay, so for the buckets, I have 3 for one-story incentives, which are additional floor area ratio, to be determined what number.
Yeah.
Reduce the covered outdoor space as it applies to the FAR, so maybe a certain percentage. So
Yeah.
Mr. Glennon can include that at 100% in general, and then a code change would be maybe 75%, but we can sort of play with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then reduce the front setback for one-story homes from maybe 30 to 28 feet, something like that. So
Potentially.
those are
Yep.
the 3 incentives that I have relative to single stories in the overlay district. So for 2-story regulations, I have reduced the second story percentage of FAR.
Yep.
And I have that staff is going to pull recent homes with street views and explain what the percentage of the second floor was on that particular home. So we have an idea of what it looks like if it's 50% versus 20%, 40%,
Yep.
whatnot. Adjust, so increase the front setback
Mhm.
and or the second floor setback, which is currently at 5 feet and
Right.
30 feet respectively. And then reduction of roof heights from 30 feet to 28 feet. So that is everything in those 2 buckets.
Yes.
So with that, I guess we had all the items on our agenda, so I'm not necessarily going to go over that. We've
No.
discussed what we need to do, and we have narrowed it down a little
And
bit.
then the homework as well is for you getting to with Paul, Trey, and then giving we're going to have for the next meeting 4 examples. I mean, we can plug them in, but let's specifically focus in between each end of the
So
spectrum.
what I'll do is I'll email Mr. Glennon the survey lot depth and width for between 4 to 6 within the overlay district that's been identified. I'll try to choose the smallest one, 2 medium-sized ones, and then I don't know if the largest one, there's probably value there just for informational
Yeah,
purposes. So I'll
yeah.
choose the largest
And it
one
shows
as well.
we've considered the range.
That's right.
Yep. And then if Michael has those, and then we can literally play around with, okay, it's not 28 feet, it's 30, because that's why this is such a useful tool.
And then I also,
the only like a roof height really isn't
No, that
something
doesn't
that
come
has
into it.
takes, but
No.
I think everything else should be, the setback thing will be a little squirrely, but like, I think that at the very least, like FAR, obviously, the covered unenclosed, I think, percentage,
That thing.
the second floor is percentage of first floor, like all of that. So like most certainly we can get good, like that'll be like much easier to visualize or to stress test.
Right.
Because I do know he wanted to start whittling it down for y'all to be able to give something to the ARPB and commission by
Exactly.
November, December.
Yeah, I think there's no reason why we can't come out of that meeting in October and really have real proposals to put forward to the
Recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we start tying down. Okay. In that case, if there's no other meeting points by the committee members, staff.
the only other thing was about the historic designation. So I want to make sure that
that's a consideration I think we should put to the ALP. From my notes were that we give the people guidance in terms of the definitions, because we haven't got a definition, but also what procedure they go through and the pros and the cons of if they decide to go through the process of having their property classified as historic. We're giving some.
They can do that now.
Can they do it now?
I don't know. Can they? Can't anyone historically designate their property if they want?
If it meets the criteria, get a tax.
I'm not really sure.
Could we, for the next meeting, have a look at what the criteria are?
So we would.
Restrictive in your value.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, it locks you in.
But that's their choice.
Anything without going to roof to decide if you can.
And that's the issue.
Yeah.
We're not imposing it on anybody.
Right.
Be offering it up.
We'll just say to people, even if it's a case of go to this website. I know it sounds crazy, and some people they might want to do it. Who knows?
Yeah,
we're giving people the choice.
Well, Trey, if they live there and stay there, by historically designating it, they can do things to the home that you may not be able to do otherwise. I mean, if it locks in the elevation,
Right.
Okay.
Do they get a tax break?
No
problem.
No real estate tax break.
Yeah, that's an accounting question.
No, that's why.
No.
Is there any ability to undesignate your house?
So you would, you can apply to, it would be the town, since it would be our ordinance. We would say, sure, you're granted. And then a subsequent owner could say, all right, I want to undesignate it and I want to demo the structure. And that would be up to the historic preservation board or whatever committee that we have, which could be the commission or ARPB. But that's why I'm saying it is extremely comprehensive. So if there's only 4 houses, we have an entire ordinance. We have all this different criteria. We have another board that we need to create, which I'm totally open to doing. But, I just want everyone to know that it's not just, we're just going to say that this house is historic and they're okay.
So
it's a lot of, it'll be a lot of work.
Is that in our remit of this working party?
And that's why I said not really, but also yes, as it relates to.
It's not in our remit.
Yeah, it's not under our.
We're set up to address the massing of properties in the.
That's right.
I mean, that's where what I had said, but Paul, pushed back on that and said, no, it does address massing, and there are some properties in the core that would.
We just say that if someone wants to go down that route, the onus is on them to explore it. Because they could do it at the moment, irrespective of us being here. They
I don't
No?
I don't know if there's, you know, I'm assuming there's some sort of a federal register of historic places that we could have some properties, but I don't know if that's going to be significant to on a national or state level versus historic to Gulfstream, right? The Polo Cottage is historic to us, but it's probably not historic.
Again, the onus to find out isn't on us.
Well, right now
The
it'd be separate.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not going to be. Yeah. Do we have to address? Sorry, guys. Do we have to address the historic classification or otherwise in this working party? My feeling is we don't. My feeling is we don't.
Let's let the town commission or the ARPD push that back if they want to, but I don't think so.
I think we go ahead with our really focus on what are we doing to disincentivize massing in the core
In the
overlay.
core.
That's our focus. And if they come back and say, well, have you thought about historic? Yes, we have. That's a very quick conversation. Okay, but that's my feeling. I'm open to anything else. But you've got enough wheels to spin with what you're doing at the moment, rather than going through definitions or whatever of historic buildings. You know, because we said we haven't got a definition.
Well, right. So I would want to at least provide the committee a framework of we would enact an ordinance. These would potentially be some of the properties would apply. If you want me to do it, I will.
Okay.
If you want to just recommend it.
How long is it going to take you? Is it just I know it's not cut and paste, but is it going to take you a day, or is it sort of you can knock it together for us to have there to pull out as and when we need to show we've considered it? But I don't think it's the main focus of what we're doing.
I will try to give some broad strokes about what we could do.
Okay, let's have it on record. Broad strokes. No. Broad strokes. That's okay. So moving forward, public speaker, and if there aren't any other points, we are getting together immediately after the ARP on the 24th, 17th. Sorry, 17th.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.